Hello and welcome to Highway to Hoover, a production of SEC Extra at D1Baseball.com. I'm your host, Joe Healy, joined today by Travis L. Brown of the Bryan-College Station Eagle. We're going to talk Texas A&M baseball, and a lot to get into, not just from the standpoint of the success that Texas A&M has had, but the team's hit for the first time all year, a couple speed bumps of late. So we're going to get into what that's about, the level of concern we should have. I know, Aggies listening to this will be able to set their worry meters to the right level after Travis and I get done talking, hopefully. We'll get to all that in just a second. But first, I have to let you know that this episode of Highway to Hoover and every episode of Highway to Hoover is brought to you by Pitch Logic, the system used by players, coaches, scouts, and instructors at all levels of play, from youth leagues to the big leagues. The easy-to-use and affordable technology makes the platform accessible to every player at every level. All the metrics and features used at the highest level. See pitchlogic.com for more information. First off, Travis, I appreciate you joining us.
Yeah, anytime. Glad to be talking some baseball, especially this time of year where we're rolling into the postseason.
No kidding. Yeah, quick turnaround. The last regular season weekend starts tonight as we record, Thursday morning. And then, basically in zero turnaround before everybody heads to Hoover. So yeah, we're in a tight, compact period of the year, but for baseball folks, there's nothing better than this time of year in college baseball. I alluded to it at the top, Travis, but 2 straight series losses now, both on the road, LSU and Ole Miss. I've joked that actually it's just A&M's way of trying to get as many SEC teams into the postseason as possible. They're just being kind about it. But 2 series losses is 2 series losses. Do you think that's something or nothing, the 2 series losses in the big picture standpoint?
Man, it's so hard to gauge that in the SEC because anybody can kind of spark. There's been so many years, especially with A&M, where they've looked, okay for the beginning of the season and then hit a series and then just rode out that momentum all the way through the postseason. So you never know if someone's catching fire as much as it is, A&M's struggling. I do think that one of the biggest factors that is played into A&M's struggles is the fact that Braden Montgomery has been their everything this season, and he's struggling right now. Coming into he's been one of their top hitters. He's hit 23 home runs this season and is just been everything at the plate for the Aggies. But they in the last 14 games, he's hitting below 200, slashing not great, and has just had some struggles at the plate. And you need a little bit more from your 3-hole hitter, especially one that has been so consistent for the Aggies this season. So I think there are some certain players who are kind of hitting a little bit of a rut right now, and that's contributing into the whole team kind of hitting a little bit of a slump. But it was kind of due. I mean, that offense has been so good this year and so consistent this year that you thought that at some point somebody might struggle a little bit. So, we'll see if this is an actual indication of bad things to come, or if it's just they finally hit a slump that they never really had all season.
One of the other snags the last couple of weekends has been the rotation, and we've seen that expressed in, Tanner Jones getting skipped last weekend, Justin Lampkin not officially in the rotation this weekend. Now, some of that has been mitigated by Shane Sdao coming out of the bullpen to start last weekend, was excellent against Ole Miss. He's in the rotation here again. What did you make of Sedao's start, and does that feel like a solution to maybe a little bit of what ails A&M, or maybe more of a one-off? What's your feel on that?
Yeah, so Jim Schlossnagle has had the dilemma all season of the fact that he has some options this year at pitching, which is something that he hasn't had the last 2 seasons he's been in Aggie land. But with that decision comes a little bit of heartburn because Shane Sdao has been really good out of the bullpen, especially kind of late in games. He's relied on either Sdao or Evan Ashenbeck to come out of the pen and really kind of shut things down. Whatever game Ashenbeck didn't take is going to be Sedao's game. And so you move him to the starting rotation, and that kind of leaves a little bit of a gap in a bullpen that's been really good for the Aggies this year. So, I think he always was potentially a solution in the starting lineup because he has been so good. But Excuse me, sorry about that. But they by moving him to the starting rotation, that leaves a little bit of hole at the end of the bullpen. So you kind of need him to do what he did against Ole Miss and go 7 innings scoreless, really get deep, so that you can not have to rely so much on the bullpen to shut the game down. So yes, option. Chris Cortez has always kind of been there as an option to slide into the starting rotation. So they have options, but of course, as it always is, then you have to figure out how you mitigate that in the bullpen. And I don't know if they have the extreme depth to really fully mitigate that.
You bring up Cortez, and he's such an interesting guy, man, because at his best, he's the most electric arm A&M has. When he's at his best, I don't think there's anybody better on that pitching staff. It's just different stuff, but so rarely has he totally been at his best. And part of that's been, his shifting role, and then it feels like they're always trying to figure out exactly how to use Chris Cortez, and I get it, because you want to best use someone as talented as he is. Where, we currently sit right now, where are we in terms of the way Chris Cortez is being used? And you as an observer, where have you seen that he tends to thrive the most?
I think I do think he has had a little bit of a revelation coming out of the bullpen this season. He's always had a fastball that can touch 100. The past year, last year he struggled to find the strike zone with anything really, and so he was walking way too many guys, putting guys on base, and then when he makes one mistake, it becomes a 2 or 3 run mistake, not a 1 run mistake, and that absolutely killed the Aggies. So we'll see if Cortez can kind of find his rhythm again, and we'll see if I'm back. Sorry. We'll see if Cortez can find his rhythm again, and we'll see if that he can kind of find the strike zone, especially with his slider. It's been his off-speed stuff that has really kind of taken the next step this season and made him become the pitcher that he is this season, because the slider and the changeup that he throws to offset that fastball is what really has made that the most effective. I know it's something that Max Wiener's worked on a lot this season, being able to spot up that slider. So when that is working for him, the whole arsenal is working for him a little bit better than just when he's throwing that 100-mile-per-hour fastball.
Last thing on the bullpen, we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about Ashenbeck a little bit. We had him about a week ago. We put out, D1 Baseball put out our top 50 relievers in the country rankings. Evan Ashenbeck, #1. And I don't mean this disrespectfully, but there's nothing about him that suggests he should be the best relief pitcher in college baseball. I mean, we talked about it last year on this show. Like, the stuff is not all that exciting. Jim Schlossnagle really didn't expect him last season to be, the contributor that he was, and yet he was. And here we are, 2 seasons in a row where he's just been this guy. A, are you out of words to describe how good Evan Ashenbeck is? And B, are you any closer to really cracking the code of, like, how does this guy do what he does when we're in a league where usually you got to have pretty doggone good stuff to get it past hitters?
Yeah, so I think the main way to describe what Evan Ashenbeck does is going back to, I talked to his coach from junior college, and he said when he came into junior college, they had to teach him how to throw balls because he was so good at throwing strikes. He was too predictable. The hitters always knew it was going to be falling somewhere in the strike zone, and they actually had to teach him how to throw effective balls to mix into his repertoire because he was too good at throwing strikes. And that's kind of what's made him so effective. He just pounds the zone. I mean, he gets ahead in counts and fills it up, and when he is pinpointing a fastball, it doesn't really matter how hard the fastball is going. If it's going right where he wants it to go, right into the catcher's mitt, they have enough advanced scouting to know that that's not where the hitter is going to have some success. And he is really good at that, to the point where the amount of 3 or 4 inning saves they've run out of him this season has been almost comical, because basically Jim Schlossnagle said if he can get a starting pitcher to the sixth or the seventh inning, they're going to run Evan Ashenbeck out there, and they're not going to pull him until the game is over because they can depend on him that much. So he's thrown a lot of 3 and 4 inning saves. And when you talk about the kind of slump the Aggies have been in, I mean, you want to quote unquote slump. He's allowed a couple of runs in the last couple of series, which he hasn't done most of his career really. But it's just a fascinating story. He's a guy that basically got a spot on the team because Jim Schlossnagle said, we might cut him, but there is you never really want to cut a lefty who can throw strikes. So you might as well keep him on the team because you could use him for a lefty on lefty matchup. And then he comes out against in that Texas Tech series last year, late in the game, Texas Tech game out at Minute Maid Park, late in the game when it's an extra innings, and basically throws a start with how long he has to go in those extra innings, and it secures them the win. And after that, Jim Schlossnagle was like, well, we got to consider this guy because that was really good. And he's been nails ever since.
It's great, sliding doors moment in life, right? I mean, that Texas Tech game doesn't go the way it goes. It ends in 9 innings. Ashenbeck maybe doesn't get in the game. I mean, who knows how that future plays out in that way. I'm sure that's something that Schlossnagle himself probably thinks about, just how close they came to maybe not having Evan Ashenbeck be the guy that he ends up being. Last thing on the pitching staff, especially given that we're heading into the postseason, if you're going to make a deep run in Hoover, now we could litigate whether or not that's a good thing for a team like A&M that's at the top of the sport, going to be hosting probably a top 8 seed, all that stuff. But if you're going to make a deep run in Hoover, if you're going to get in a regional, end up in a regional final, you're going to need as many arms as as possible. Lampkin and Tanner Jones have not been at their best, like we talked about, but I'm kind of the opinion that you're going to need to circle back on them at some point, especially with Lampkin being a guy who pitched so well in the postseason last year. What say you about that thought generally of like, look, it hasn't been great for those guys in SEC play, both have ERAs in conference play over 8, but those guys are too good. And in Jones in particular has stuff that suggests that, for A&M to be at its best, they're going to need those guys ultimately.
Yeah, I mean, the conversation with Schlossnagle after most of the midweek games, at least once they hit conference play, is the fact that he kind of lamented the fact that they weren't able to find a 4th starter because you need a 4th starter once you get to Hoover if you have to go through the losers bracket of a regional. And they tried to roll a whole lot of guys out there and try to find that 4th starter. Well, as the season went on, they kind of lost and need to try to find a 3rd starter. Because Tanner Jones has been inconsistent, because Justin Lampkin has been up and down. And so, yeah, I think that they're going to have to factor back in because they don't have enough starting pitching arms to try to go through Hoover with what they have. But both of them are going to have to factor in if they go through a loser's bracket ever. You also could have a guy like Isaac Morton, Weston Moss. Those are the guys that they've tried to lean on to get to be a 4 starter. Potentially Chris Cortez, even though we've talked about him and how they do like him out of the bullpen more than in the starting rotation. So, those are guys. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of the big question mark heading into the postseason is you need to have starting pitching depth to make a run. I mean, especially in Omaha. That's what kind of doomed them in Omaha 2 seasons ago is they didn't have enough starting pitching depth to really compete. And they're going to have to circle back on those guys. If they're going to be successful, those guys are going to have to kind of figure it out. And they're probably going to need someone like an Isaac Morton, a Weston Moss, potentially Chris Cortez to step up and become that starter that they haven't had through the season.
In the lineup, Gavin Grahovac, I heard all fall was, hey, this guy is – I heard a lot of the same things about Grahovac that I heard about Laviolette the year before in terms of, hey, this guy's ready right away, like it's future superstar. The numbers, for the most part, back that up. I mean, okay, he swings and misses a little more than you'd like, but he's a freshman, so on and so forth. To what extent do you feel like that Grahovac is on that similar track to where Laviolette is, where, hey, we're looking at a superstar and a future high draft pick?
I sincerely do. They're a different type of hitter in my mind. Laviolette has the really just he's the power guy. He's the guy that you mess up the pitch and it's probably put on the train tracks at Bluebell Park, way over the fence. Grahovac, to me, comes across, even though the numbers don't say this, is just a little bit more of the well-rounded hitter. He's the guy who is aiming for the gaps, and home runs are mistakes. Like they're the ones that didn't hit the gap. They're going over. But he has tremendous power. He hits for tremendous average. That's one of the reasons why Jim Schlossnagle hits him at the leadoff position. He doesn't have like sensational wheels, that old school model of leadoff hitter. He hits for great average, gets on base so that when Laviolette, Braden Montgomery, those guys get up, that there's traffic on base when they can demonstrate their pop a little bit. But he's been extremely impressive to watch, especially too in the field. I mean, he is nails a defender over there at third base, and has made some really impressive plays over there. Some at times some game saving plays. You would not, if you just walked into Bluebell Park and didn't know anything about the team and didn't look at your scorecard, you would not know that he was a freshman.
Yeah, certainly physically either. Definitely a grown man's look out there. Two guys who have been key in giving the lineup depth are Jackson Appel and Hayden Schott. Two guys who had good careers at Ivy League programs, two good Ivy League programs. They both played in regional finals. Schott in 2022 in Blacksburg. Jackson Appel last year at Auburn as a part of the Penn team. Have those guys been, would you say, pleasant surprises with just how effective they've been? Because again, nice careers in the Ivy League, but you don't really expect someone to make that jump to the SEC and actually maybe get statistically better. But those guys in some ways have.
Jim Schlossnagle over the past couple of years has had a little bit of luck with the Ivy Leagues, bringing a guy or two down. And from all indications, there's more coming in the future too. I think they have been pleasant surprises for anybody who has been a fan of Texas A&M. And the bigger thing too, I mean, their numbers speak for themselves. But the bigger thing too is they seem to be extremely good clubhouse guys. Not especially Hayden Schott, who, the best A&M teams, really the best college baseball teams when you're out there, they have that one or two guys who are just the absolute class clowns. I mean, just ridiculous. But when it gets between the lines, knows how to really compete, but just keeps things loose. I think a big problem with A&M's team last year as they struggled through the middle of the season is, they lost Micah Dallas. They still had Nathan Detmer, but Micah Dallas, Nathan Detmer 2 years ago were the guys that they kept everything loose. They were goofy. They had the Pringles cans. When things weren't going well, they kept guys smiling and laughing and enjoying baseball. Last year, they didn't really have that guy. They had a lot of seniors who were really trying to prove themselves and were pressing. And I think when the times got hard, it kind of got harder because of that. So you look at Hayden Schott, and that guy is hysterical. I mean, anytime he does a press conference with us, the whole thing is like a tongue-in-cheek stand-up routine. He's great. And I think that was a piece that they were missing from last year, is that guy that can just lighten the mood. And I think that's actually been proven this year, that value has been proven because, midway through the season, they moved Hayden Schott to DH and put Caden Sorrell out in left field. Now, Caden Sorrell earned that spot too because he's been great out there playing defense. But part of that is the coaching staff just wanted Hayden Schott in the dugout at all times to keep things going, to be a little bit of the cheerleader, to be the guy to lighten the mood. And from he's made plenty of contributions on the field, at the plate, driving in runs and getting hits. But I think when you look back, probably his biggest contribution is just keeping things light in the clubhouse when things were a little rocky or when things weren't necessarily going A&M's way. So he's been a huge addition from that perspective.
Yeah, you mentioned Ivy League transfers. still coming in. Wyatt Hensler is the one to watch. I think the biggest name this time around. So if you're an Aggie listening to this, Penn plays in the Ivy League tournament this weekend. If you happen to catch that on ESPN Plus, Wyatt Hensler is, unless he heads off to pro ball, which he might have a crack at that. He will be at A&M next season. The dude can really hit. So keep an eye out for him. Last thing for you, Travis. A&M fielding the ball at 979. Now, you and I both know fielding percentage doesn't always tell the whole story defensively, but you've alluded a couple times to guys who are doing a really nice job defensively. So does the team defense eye test match what's the top 25 fielding percentage in the country?
It has through the majority of the season. I think when you look back at the last 2 weeks, they've been a little bit rocky in the field. And that's been one of the contributions to why things have slid a little bit. But I mean, they have played clean defense through the majority of the year. You have Caden Sorrell making plays out there. You have Gavin Grahovac made a lot of plays that you can remember were just outstanding diving plays. And they get the simple things done too. I mean, 2 years ago when A&M made that postseason run, they had a pitching staff that for whatever reason just couldn't run a PFP. I mean, there was teams that were purposefully laying bunts down against them just because the pitching staff struggled so much getting the ball to first base. You haven't seen that at all this year with any of the pitching staff they had this year, and the defense has been great. You even look at some of the instances where they've had to slot Caden Kent in over at first base, position. He's a utility guy, but that's not probably his primary two positions. Travis Chestnut has stepped up into second base and and really galvanized the roster there and done a good job defensively there. So there's not any weak link in the defense, and save for the last 2 weeks, as you could say about a lot of facets of A&M's game, the defense might even be better than that. You've never had to wonder if the defense was going to hold up against the team.
Yeah, Ali Camarillo, 6 errors all year. I mean, playing shortstop in the SEC. I mean, that's, you're getting all kinds of crazy short hops and in between hops and all kinds of stuff and guys who are getting down the line in 4 seconds flat. So to not rush throws and airmail things, that's impressive too at a tough position.
And he has been among some of you can think of some of the best defensive shortstops that A&M has had in recent years, and he's at the top of the list. He's been absolutely fantastic defensively, and has had a bat that at least through a stretch there in the middle of the season has been among the top on A&M's roster. So and when you look at getting on base, he had a over 30 game on base streak through the middle of the year, and has been really good to hit for average. So a really good pickup there, and especially on the defensive side of the ball.
I lied to you. I actually do have one more thing, Travis. It looks like the thing that might play the best defense this weekend, or at least tonight, is the weather. I'm going to have you play meteorologist a little bit. Look out your window, Travis. How we doing for tonight's game?
It's gray. I fully expect they're going to be battling the weather tonight. At least from the last forecast that I saw, there was a lot of really high percentage numbers once you got into the afternoon and evening. More importantly, since I was going to be working tonight, I was going to have a golf round this morning that I think that I went ahead and canceled because of it. So I'm going to be really upset if that, it doesn't rain and then that doesn't get in. But yeah, it's going to be interesting, and they are really adamant about getting this in the days that it's scheduled. Jim Schlossman said they're going to do everything they can. It could even be like an 8 or 8:30 start if they need to get this thing going tonight. But the first mitigation is they'll move and have a doubleheader Friday and then play the last game Saturday. This series, as opposed to any other ones, they do have the possibility of bumping it back to do a Friday, Saturday, Sunday series, but there's little appetite, it seems like, from anybody to make that happen. So looks like if they can't get it in tonight, doubleheader tomorrow and a game on Saturday.
Yeah, a couple of notes there too. Like, one is that this is an ESPN2 game, so teams sometimes are a little bit drag their feet a little bit more just because of maybe network pressure is a little bit too strong of a word, but trying to hold that window to get on ESPN2. And then secondarily, you mentioned they can bump it back a day, but I get asked this question on Twitter all the time, so I'll just cut it off here for fans listening. Once you start a series, though, you cannot bump it another day. So if they play tonight, they cannot then roll over like the last game to Sunday if they need it. Now, tonight's the bigger problem, so I doubt that would come to that, but just so you know, this weekend of the season, I get asked every year, like, well, can't we just play it Sunday? And no is the answer. You have to play the series in 3 days, regardless of when you start it. So anyway, Travis, I appreciate you joining us. Should be a fun weekend. Arkansas and Texas A&M at Bluebell Park. The series we've been waiting on for a long time. So I hope you get some good weather. You get out there, you get to enjoy it. But I appreciate you joining us this morning.
Hey, anytime. Sorry for some of the technical difficulties today. Apparently, everything decided to shut down. So the words, you didn't really need to see me. The words are all that matter.
Yeah, audio was clean. No worries about that at all whatsoever. Thank you to everyone for listening to this episode of Highway to Hoover. Thank you to Pitch Logic for sponsoring this and every episode of Highway to Hoover. And thank you to Travis once again for joining.